Hello there, hi, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of the My English Matters podcast. I'm Amna, one of the creators of My English Matters, together with Madam Azimah and Aisha. And at My English Matters, we help Malaysians and English learners improve their English through our online courses, membership program, and workshops. So today I am joined by Madam Azimah, and we want to talk about this specific topic, which is called how to avoid over explaining. So last weekend, we had a workshop which was called Seven Speaking Strategies to Better Elaborate and Express Yourself. And one of our students asked us this question: how do I avoid over explaining? And we thought it would be a great topic to talk more about today. So, hello, Madam Azimah. How are you today?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Can't wait to share with you my tips for how to avoid over-explaining. So let's do
All
it.
right, so let's get started. Now, first of all, what is over explaining? Can you tell us or
All
give
right.
us an example what it means?
So if you're doing a presentation or you're chairing a meeting, whatever it is that requires you to speak, over-explaining means that you are just giving unnecessary details and examples that just hinders the pace and the process of getting the message across. You're just confusing them further because you're just over explaining things that they already know and they don't know. And they don't need to know.
Mm. So the whole aim is to be concise, right? Concise
Yes,
meaning
that's
that you want to share information in a way that is simple, understandable, and gets to the point quickly with as
yeah.
less words as possible. Right.
Mm-hmm. If possible.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
so that's what is over explaining. Can you share your first point of how to avoid over explaining?
Okay. The first thing is number one, you need to know your audience or your listener because you want to know what they don't know, what they need to know, and therefore what is important. So let me go through with things that what they don't know. So if there are instances in your presentation parts that they don't know, then this is your chance to give that explanation. For example, it might be defining a term, a medical term, a scientific, whatever jargon, a concept. Then that's fine. You can give that definition. Or if you need to give context so that they are all on the same page, then if that's necessary, so that they're all on the same page as you, then give that explanation. That's fine. And then you need to think about what they do now need to know. So there are two aspects to this. What they need to know is important. So you are the one who's deciding what is important and what will carry my message across, what will make it memorable. That's good. And then you also need to know what is nice to know. So here I put this in quotation marks if you can see my hand here. Nice to know, my air quotation here. Nice to know are things that's probably entertaining, it's probably funny, but it's not really important to the message. So here you have to decide what's important and what's nice to know, and then
Yeah, it just reminds me of this situation where I had to teach a class. So I taught a class on writing. So there were five modules, and for every time that I need to teach, the whole week as I prepare for it, I always feel so overwhelmed because there's so much knowledge, so many tips, so many techniques that I want to share with my audience. But at the end, I always tell myself, okay, my role as the speaker or as the teacher is to do the research and be aware of everything that's out there that's important. And then I need to be the one who needs to synthesize or to pick out what is important for my audience. So I know that my audience are people who are working, they're working adults, and they write more for work related situations. So I needed to pick out the things that I felt were important for my audience to know. I didn't need to share every single thing that I researched during that week as I prepared for the class. So I think that's very important to know who your audience is because there's so much information out there. It's your role as a speaker or as a trainer to decide what your audience needs to know. Yeah. So
Yeah,
thanks for sharing that. All right.
yeah.
So what's
And
your next? Yeah, sorry.
I wanted to add as well about knowing the objective of being there as well. So this is an additional thing about knowing your audience, meaning that why are they there in the first place? So the objective is you need to reach something, right? A goal. Like you said, you were doing a writing class. So there's an objective there that they want to be better writers. So that's it. You don't have to give like the history of all the best writers in the world, etc. That would
Yeah,
be
I don't need to share
nice
about
to know.
Shakespeare and all that.
Yeah.
Even it's
Mm.
nice to know,
Nice to
but
know, not important.
mhm.
Okay, so moving on to my second point, which is my second tip, which is to think of one point only and one example. So one point and one example. So you need to match it. One point, one example. That's it. But I want to explain a little bit about examples because not all examples are created equal. What I mean by that is that some examples are short, nice and short, short and sweet. For example, a definition can be short and sweet. Giving context is short and sweet, so be brief in that. Or perhaps you're just citing a quote that can be just 2 or 3 lines. That's it. It's not like a whole paragraph. Those are short and sweet examples. Some are deep and long examples. So this really depends. If your point is really complicated, so your examples can take a bit more time to expand. So um, long examples can be a case study where you really give the history of what's going on, etc., if necessary. Or maybe it is a short story, an anecdote of something, right? It could be a demonstration as well. So, demonstration can involve you and perhaps a volunteer just to make things a bit more exciting. This is good for teachers as well. Just to create liveliness because it is important that they remember that, right?
Mhm.
And then some examples are also emotional. If you have a story, for example, a story that's evoke emotions because you want to appeal to their emotions and their heart. And some examples are just factual. So you want to appeal to their logic and intelligence. That's that's um, that's my second point about thinking one point, one example, and then choose your examples wisely.
Yeah. So examples are there to establish your point, to get people to understand it. But there are situations where you may need to share more than one example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's important to interact with the audience as well, which you're going to go into later. But yeah, sometimes you do need to give another example if you see that the person or the people that you're speaking to look like they're going blank, or you ask them, you say,
Mm-hmm.
do you understand what I'm saying? And then you can give another example. So it's important to just have at least one example. But is it okay? Do you think that you would have to be ready with another example in case they don't understand? Or is it just fine to be ready with just one example?
I think if you tend to panic, I think one example is enough. Because as you speak, you might, who knows, magic might happen. You might come up with another example. And this leads to my third point then, which is to look at your listener and react accordingly. So, like Anna said, if you have lots of examples, put it in the back of your pocket, like I'll use that if they look confused, or I will use that if they need more example. They're like, they've got a question, they need more elaboration. Then that's your opportunity to give more examples if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to reacting according to how your listener is reacting, ask them back like, are you with me, or can I move on? If they're nodding, one person is nodding, that means it's good enough, right? Or did I explain myself clearly,
Mm, yeah.
right? So that's very
And I
important.
think about sharing examples and interacting with your audience. For me personally, I would be prepared with just one example because I know that I have enough experience, I have enough knowledge on that topic that I don't need to come up with so many examples. I don't need to be prepared with so many examples. Just prepare myself with one example, and then if people still don't understand, then I'll give another example. But I am confident with myself that I can come up with another example if somebody asks me, because I've done my research. I've had experience. I know a lot about this particular topic. So I think it is important for you to know more than what you are actually talking about. So being over prepared is good for situations where people will ask you questions. People will ask for more examples. So yes, you
Yep.
do need to have a certain level of knowledge, certain expertise in the topic that you're talking about. Do your research so that you'll be prepared to give more examples or to give more explanation. But
Yeah.
the danger is when you're an expert, or when you've done your research, you've explored so many aspects of that topic. The danger is over explaining. So that's what this topic is all about: how to avoid over explaining when you know so much about the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what I just
Okay.
wanted to add on.
I love that. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Moving on to my fourth point, which is to use phrases when you start an example, when you want to give an example. Okay. So, my favorite phrase is actually for example, or for instance, or let me explain why I said that. And there are more, of course. I'll give you some more. Allow me to give you an example. Or can I have a volunteer to help me demonstrate this concept? Whatever. I have lots of phrases in my mind, and I encourage you guys to have that as well. So, phrases to introduce your example. This helps the audience prepare to understand, oh, she's going to go into the example mode to help clarify the message, solidify the message further. Other phrases that you can also use to have is to indicate that you're finished with that one point. So you can say, moving on, or so that was my example. Let's move on to my second point, etc.
Mm.
etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about this one situation where we had a student, and as she was explaining, she gave examples, and one example, right? She gave an example, and then she failed to indicate that she was done with her example. So she would share an example, and then she would look at people's faces. She would look at the audience, and they would be probably they smiling, or they look like, are you going to end? And then she would just continue with another example, and then she would wait for them to say something, or wait for them to show that they understand, and she would continue with another example. So I think for her, the problem was that she didn't share a phrase. She didn't say anything to indicate that she has finished with her point, or she's finished with her example. So I think
Mm,
one thing that we need to know is that we can't rely on our audience to tell us to stop. We have to be the ones, as the speaker, to actually say, okay, I'm finished with my example. Do you have any questions? Or, I'm finished with my example. I'm finished with my point. Let's move on to the next point. You have to be the one. You can't expect your audience to do that for you. But if they do look confused, then you can ask them, you look confused. How can I help you? Or, how can I explain myself better? Right.
mm.
So yeah,
Or
that's
you
what I
can
just.
even say, if you have a question on this, ask me later because I need to move on. Right, you can say that as well.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You need to look at the time, right?
Yeah, because you are in control of the flow. This is one thing that you need to understand. You are in control of the flow. If there's any time that you feel you're rambling, over explaining, just pause. So this leads me to my, I believe it's my fifth point now, which is to pause and slow down. So pausing and slow down, very, very important. This is because when this allows you to actually um, give time to process what you're saying before and after, right? And it also allows your listener to process. So not just you, it helps your listener as well. This is the one thing about speaking. Your listener can't rewind you, right? They can't control what you just said. You
Mhm.
also can't either. And so the power of pauses is important because it's in a way it's a stop button for them. It allows them to process. It's very, very important. And slow down as well helps you to think about, oh, can I move on to the next point now?
Mm.
it allows you to say to yourself things like, oh, listen, I have another example, it's really great, but I think I have more time, I'll share this in the Q&A. Gives you time to
Yeah.
actually have that dialogue and answer yourself.
I noticed that some of our students, they tend to over explain because they're talking too fast. And they're talking too fast because they're nervous. One of the main reasons that they say that they're just nervous and they just talking so fast, and then they move on to the next point, and then to the next point so fast that people don't even have time to digest what they're saying. So I think that pausing and slowing down gives people more time to actually think about what they're saying, and it also gives you time for, as a speaker, to actually think, right, am I done with this point? Do I need to share more examples? Because if you're talking too fast, you've just finished one point too fast, you finish one example too fast, then you think that the people will need more, so you just tend to over explain because of that. Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
is there anything else that you'd like to add on, or shall we
Yeah.
wrap up?
I think about pausing. I just want to add a bit more about pausing and slowing down. About not having this button to rewind yourself, right? So, it's just better for you to practice. When you do practice slowing down a little bit more, and this will give you time to have that dialogue inside of you to adjust what's going on, to adjust yourself and your and to breathe as well. Those are
Mm.
very important reasons on why you should pause and slow down. Okay, so
Okay, I
that's it.
have one bonus question. All right.
Hmm.
So, what, for example, one student, she or he, you know, they begin a presentation or they begin this discussion, and they forgot all the points that we shared today, and they over explained themselves.
Hmm.
What should that person do? So they've just rambled on and on for 10 minutes to talk about just one point. So what can they do to get themselves back on track or get their
All right.
audience back to the point?
Well, it's never too late for you to restore whatever that needs to be restored, right? It's never too late. Even while you're presenting, if you feel you've messed up, you still have time to recover. And you can just acknowledge that, oh, you've rambled on. You can even say something like, oh, sorry that I just went on a bit too long now. Let's get back to my point, everybody. Or you can even ask your audience, oh, where was I? Or do you have the time? Things like that. Just, I think audience are forgiving if you suddenly realize that you're making mistake and then you're reacting to that as well. Like, for example, look at, if you're watching us right now, you can see my cat is here distracting me and the audience. So my cat is on the table on camera,
Yeah, but it's
right?
a cute distraction, so it's
it's it's,
okay.
it's fine distraction as well. And this is just a relief, like people can see, oh, this presenter, she's not perfect, she's not like got it all together. Sometimes there are kids, children, whatever, there are cats distracting you, but you acknowledge your mistake or whatever that's going on, and then come back to your point.
Mm,
um,
yeah.
I think, yeah, this is why it's important that a presenter has fun and adapting to the situation, and don't panic. I mean, yeah, it's easy for me to say don't panic, but if you have already practiced enough and you really believe in what you have to say, and your audience are with you, supporting you, then you're
Mhm.
gonna you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be
Yeah.
fine.
I think one thing that we have to remember is that there's no such thing as a perfect conversation or a perfect presentation. If it goes perfect, then well done. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't go, to how it was planned, of how you planned it, then it's fine as well. You have more opportunities. Just consider it as, a learning experience for you. Just like, what Rowena is doing now. It's a learning, is it a learning experience? I don't know what we can learn from this, but there's
Well,
no such thing as a perfect video, a perfect
yeah,
presentation, a perfect conversation. You do your best to adapt to the situation, right? Yeah.
exactly. While maintaining your focus and enjoying yourself. Oh my goodness, my cat is having a field day. So maybe my audience would like to see Rowena a little bit. So I don't know if you can see her, but of course you can see her. She might as well be part of the
Part of
part
the
of
show.
our part of a
podcast.
showman as well. Yeah, so everybody watch Rowena.
All right. So thank you, Madam Azimah. Do you want to summarize your 5 points?
Okay, my first point was to know your audience. Therefore, you need to know their background, what they need to know, what they don't need to know, what is important, what is nice to know. Number two, think of one point and one example that will clarify that point. So you get to decide how deep or long or short and sweet or emotional or factual your examples are, or one example. Point number three is coming back to your audience, which is to look at your audience and listener and react accordingly. Do they need more examples? Are they nodding? Do you need to interact with them because they're probably bored or something? So that's number three. Number four, use phrases for introducing your example or phrases to indicate that you finished with that point and example. So I've given you some already. You watch this again. And number five, pause and slow down. Allow yourself time to process what's going on, to adapt accordingly, and most importantly, allow your listener to process what has been said.
Mhm. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Azimah. This was fun. I hope that you guys will take a lot from this session, from this podcast. And I guess that's all from us for today. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. We hope that you'll listen in our next episode next week, inshallah. And that's all from us. Thank you. Assalamualaikum and bye for now.